This is Cup of Go for January 23rd, 2023. Keep up to date with the important happenings in the Go community in just 15 minutes per week. I'm Shay Nehmad.
And I'm Jonathan Hall.
And welcome to our inaugural number 0, index 0, not out of bound error episode.
I'm excited about this.
Yeah, this is pretty exciting.
All
Let's
right.
jump into the news. So are there any official releases since the last episode? All of them. So we're
Yes.
not going to do that. But let's talk about recent releases.
Yeah, so the most recent official release, stable release, came out on January 10. So it's been 2 or 3 weeks. Go 1.19.5 and 1.18.10 were both released simultaneously. And, I just went through the milestones on both of those this morning, and there wasn't anything very exciting. No major CVEs or major bugs. It was a lot of little architecture-specific bug fixes and some backports from 120 work. So a lot of bug fixes, nothing that really deserves a huge shout-out, but it's probably a good idea to update to those.
Yeah, nothing in particular that stands out, but a shout out to the ongoing small amount of work that keeps this ecosystem alive.
Definitely.
So let's get to more exciting stuff and talk about upcoming releases with actual big features that we can wax about eloquently for just a few minutes. Don't you worry. So Go 120 is going to introduce a lot of interesting changes. Let's start with errors.
Yeah, so it's going to have this concept of wrapping multiple errors, which is something I've actually sort of hacked my own together on many applications. And they chose an interesting way to do it. Rather than adding a new method to the errors interface, they're just, I dare I say, overloading the unwrap method. It's not really overloaded, but they're adding an alternative signature to the unwrap method that returns a slice of errors. So now you can unwrap multiple errors. I don't know how much detail we want to go into on that.
So I think it's at least important to give a historical view where you had HashiCorp. They had a library that did that. I think it was called multi-error. And Dave Cheney had his own lib that solved that. And obviously this is a problem that everybody's faced where they want to process a list of requests and they the second one fails and they have 7 to go through. So they just want to file the error to the side and get back to it on a later date. But no one wants to roll out their own function signatures with list of errors because everybody likes if error different from nil, and it just works. So I think it took a really long time for the ecosystem to catch up, but it's not like you didn't have alternatives in the meanwhile. What I'm concerned about in this, I don't want to say concerned. This is great. This is a good improvement. Well done all around. But what I'm concerned about is the ability of people to use this structure in a way that doesn't make their code horrible. Because recently, up until now, when you had to wrap errors, multiple errors, you had to think about it. It wasn't like out of the box. And then you'd suddenly think about, wait, do I actually want to process everything? Do I want to short circuit the loop? And now I think that, it's going to autocomplete to all right, let's wrap. People's code, they'll just think about this part even less.
Yeah.
And it will also become sort of boilerplate where if error, return error. If error, return error. So now it's wrap error, and return. Might be good, might be not. I think it's still worth being attentive to it. But definitely good to get into the standard library instead of choosing random libraries.
Yeah, I agree.
So what's next?
So next up is memory arenas, and I think you know a lot more about this than I do because I think you've actually been researching this. Do you want to talk to us a little bit about memory arenas?
Yeah, I did my homework, and like always, it wasn't worth it. It's a very specific niche feature that's not relevant to you if you're a backend developer and your cloud costs. You can cut them by half just by noticing what you're running. But if you're running Go on small devices and you're worried about the garbage collection thing, everybody remembers that Discord article. I'll mention it just if you don't remember it. Discord put out an article called Why We Switched from Go to Rust, where they basically put a screenshot of the garbage collection running every 2 minutes, showed the spike, and were like, this is not acceptable for our use case when we need people to see if things are marked as red or not all the time and not just in 2-minute spikes. So memory arenas are a way to manually pick for a function a part of the memory that the GC doesn't have to worry that much about. It's basically an automatic, a manual free, like malloc and free, which sounds great, and in reality will improve CPU performance for memory-intensive applications where you have a ton of small identical objects that you need to load into memory in one function. Just do something with all of them, summarize them, do some statistics, whatever, and then you can drop all of them. However, looking at the actual feedback towards this feature, it's obviously useful to some people if you already have Go in your stack or whatever. At least in Reddit, people were very negative, and they were like, we don't care about this specific performance thing. We don't want to manually malloc and free. And if you're already doing like small device, you really care about the kilobytes, you really care about the CPU, you have other languages where garbage collection is not a problem, so you don't have to do these workarounds. If you really want to get into the nitty-gritty, just use C++. And if you don't want to do garbage collection at all, you have the shiny new alternative Rust, which is exactly what happened at Discord. Granted, that was a long time ago, and a lot of their points are now less valid. So that's the feature. You can decide a part of the memory, designate as an arena, and that arena is manually for that function. You can malloc stuff and free stuff, and the GC doesn't have to worry about it, so it does less in the 2-minute spikes. That's, in a nutshell, the feature.
Nicely summarized. I think I will ignore that feature.
It's definitely fun to play around with. It's not relevant for many use cases,
Exactly.
but it's something good to have in the back pocket. Oh, we have memory problems. Maybe we can think about memory arenas.
Right. Well done.
Cool. So we talked about official releases and we talked about upcoming releases. Are there any other major news in the community?
So I haven't found any other CVEs or other major releases this week, although we'll try to keep our eyes open for those and keep you informed in the future. However, the Q1 2023 Go Developer Survey is out, and everybody listening should take it.
Yeah, 100%. If you heard what we have to say so far, you're definitely opinionated about Go, and your opinion is probably very valuable. Walking through the survey, it's like it was in previous years. First questions are mostly about bucketing you into, your how do you use Go. And I really like the first question, or at least how it's phrased. The first question is, the following apply to me. Select all that apply. And the first option is, I program at work in Go. Second option is, I program at work in another language. And third option is, I program in Go outside of work. And I think this question is really, really interesting to the questions afterwards, which are about your development experience, what libraries are you using, what you're actually developing, etc., to sort of bucket the enterprise concerns or people who have money riding on Go doing things well, to people who like the language, maybe use it outside of work, maybe use it as a hobby, maybe use it as a student, who their opinions are very valid, and it's really important to keep that community alive as well. It's just very different concerns. It's important to remember that Go, it did come out in an enterprise context. It's not like a side project that evolved.
Yep.
So I think this is a really good indicator of, this is a really good survey design. I think. For me, it's checking all 3 boxes and then moving on to the actual questions. Now, we're not going to go one by one, but we highly encourage you to answer the survey yourself.
Definitely.
And if you found any interesting questions or whatever, you can talk to us, which is, I think, a pretty good opportunity to mention sort of how to talk to us.
Yes, that's a great idea. So first, of course, go.dev/blog is where you can find the survey. At present, it's the top item on the page. But yeah, you can reach us at news by email at news@cupogo.dev. Send us your news items or feedback of any sort. You can also find us on Twitter and on Mastodon. I'll have links to both of those in the show notes and on our website, which is
cupogo.dev.
Yes.
Cool. Are there any interesting conferences coming up?
Yeah, there's a ton of conferences.
Should I sign up to anything?
You should. I think you especially should submit an RFP to GopherCon Israel.
That's true. That's true. So I'm going to be talking in GopherCon Israel. The talk is going to be in Hebrew. So if you speak Hebrew, Alan Manishma. If not, I might be able to get up some closed captioning or whatever. So it's coming up real soon, February 7th, a day before the survey closes. So while listening to me, you can answer the survey. And I'll be there with someone from my team talking about protobuf and gRPC, how we sort of embedded that throughout our entire architecture. And if the lecture goes well, we might talk about it in another episode. And if you never hear about it again, it probably didn't go really well.
Well, here's to hoping we hear about it again then.
Yeah. And other than my conference, which obviously everybody already signed up for, bought tickets, flying into Tel Aviv.
Yeah. Other than that, GopherCon in San Diego, the CFP is open, call for papers, until March 13. So if you're in the San Diego area or want to be in September when the conference occurs, be sure to submit your RFP. And if you're going to be there and don't want to submit an I said RFP, CFP, if you're going to be in the area and just want to listen to all the lovely people who did submit theirs, September 26th through 29 is the conference date. And I believe tickets are already on sale. If not, they will be soon. So let's go for Con San Diego.
I would say that the San Diego GopherCon is the main one, right?
I think it is, yeah.
Yeah. Maybe we should fly out and do an episode. Let's see how that podcast does.
Yeah.
Right, but if I want to stay closer to continental breakfasts?
Yes, then we also have GopherCon Europe, which is coming up. The dates are June 26th through 29 in Berlin, which is a little bit closer for me. It's about an 8-hour drive if I were to drive there. And CFP is open until February 26th, so you have just over a month if you want to speak in Berlin at GopherCon Europe. So
cool.
Hope to see you there too.
So I think this pretty much covers the news of our show. If you just want to catch up on the interesting tidbits that you can share with your coworkers or your fellow students, these were it. These are the conferences, there's the survey, these are the new features, and these are the new releases. However, if you want to stick around for our next section, actually, Jonathan and I are going to sort of interview one another so you can get to know us a little better.
Before we do that, we must mention today's sponsor, which doesn't exist because it's a first-time episode, so we don't have sponsors.
So if we had one, wink, wink, I'm looking at you, every single VPN provider in the world. But we'll only take VPNs who have at least some of their backend written in Go. Like we have to stick to some, professional integrity.
Yeah. We want your money, but you have to at least wink it. Go.
Yeah, embrace the Gopher. So instead of a sponsorship for someone who's paying to us, we just picked an open source project which we wanted to shout out. Something I learned about recently. I haven't had the chance to play around with yet, but I really, really want to. Pocketbase. So Pocketbase is an open source project which basically takes Firebase, AWS Amplify. How do these words make you feel, Jonathan, when I say Firebase, integrate with Firebase, integrate with Amplify?
I don't know. It makes me feel a little bit icky. Like I have to learn iOS development or something.
Yeah, it's a lot of stuff to learn. And it's frameworks and CLIs and a lot of stuff to work. And it's really, really tied to a specific cloud vendor. It's great. Like I just deployed something on Amplify recently. It works, but I really like Pocketbase. It's written in Go, and it basically takes the Firebase paradigm, the sort of entire platform as a service, into a single Go binary that you can build and run close to where you're running. Maybe if you have a hobby project, that's a really, really good way to get it started. On a super cheap server, if you have a rack laying around at home, or if you have some credits left over, before you shut down your startup in the first year, you wanna find something to put the credits into, you can take Pocketbase. And I really like the fact that there is an open source offering that competes with seemingly huge projects like Amplify and Firebase. So if you do full stack web development, consider Pocketbase for your next base as a service. a DB, user authentication, data modeling, et cetera, et cetera.
All right, Shay, I want you to tell me a little bit about your name because before we recorded, I mispronounced your name. And you corrected me and told me it was a great story, so we're going to tell the story on the air. Tell me about your name.
Yeah, so I think people who program will specifically appreciate this story because it has to do with naming and formatting and abbreviations. And, we know that there are two things hard in computer science, naming things, cache invalidation, and off-by-one errors.
Yes.
So my name is Shay. In Hebrew, it's spelled Shin Yud, which is basically the first like SH and then AY. And I have a middle name. It's Shay Yaakov. So the first letter of my middle name connects with the last letter of my first name. And when I spelled my name in English, I thought it would be neat to have it carry over. And Yaakov in English spelled with Y, so I did it, and I didn't realize that means that every time I spoke to an English-speaking person, they would call me Shay, and then I'd have to go through this whole rigmarole that we just went through in the take that was just deleted, and you, dear listener, will never hear, when I was like, no, that's not my name. But yeah, that's my name, Shay. Now, Nehmad is also pretty fun. It just means nice. Literally translates to nice.
Very nice.
And Shay translates to gift. So my name literally means nice gift. And my parents didn't realize this until last year.
Whoa.
Yeah, that was a tough conversation. So that's me. That's my name, Shay Nehmad. And how about you, Jonathan?
Yeah, so my name isn't as interesting, but my parents tell me that the name Jonathan means gift from God. Mm-hmm. So it's not a nice gift, but it is a gift. I don't know how accurate that is because if you look up baby names, especially in English, you get 25 different meanings for each name usually, and some are religious and some aren't, and you get all these weird different.
Yeah, but Jonathan, Jonathan from the Bible, I get to take credit.
Okay.
All right, so cool. Other than our names, I want to sort of interview you, get to know you a little better. Also, so our listeners could get to know us a little better and make this whole podcasting experience a little more intimate. So who you're listening to. Let's get started with what is going on with this podcast. This was entirely your idea. What are your plans? What's going on here?
Yeah.
What sort of racket are you running, Jonathan?
This is my plan to take over the world. Not sure. I haven't figured out the third step yet. I know that the step 1 is a podcast. Step 3 is take over the world. That middle step is the one I'm still working on. But basically, I looked around. I wanted a Go podcast that would help me keep up with the community. And the reason I felt like I wanted that was because I'm a co-organizer of my local Go meetup group here in Amsterdam in the Netherlands. And it's not uncommon that somebody asks me a question about one thing happening in the Go community. I'm like, huh? What's that? I don't know. Like, what if there was an easy way to keep up with, the important things happening, especially when it comes to releases and upcoming releases and, discussions around things that didn't require a huge time commitment. So my solution was to take on a huge time commitment and produce a podcast.
Very programmy of you. Oh, there's this manual task which will take me 2 minutes every day. Let's automate it in a 10-hour development cycle. That's
pretty much it. Yes. Hopefully, though, the rest of you who are having the same sort of thoughts I was won't need that huge time commitment. So that's the promise of the episode, as I see it, or of the podcast, is keep up to speed with the Go community in 50 minutes a week.
Cool. By the way, you're saying our listeners want to have a huge time commitment. I promise you that everybody's enjoying, but there's 20% who are already opening, a Go side project that's feeding in RSS and taking the episodes, downloading them into their server, where another server, oh no, it's crashing. It should relay it to my phone. I think we actually like the time commitments.
Yeah.
Well, that's really cool, and I'm really happy that I got caught up in the crossfire. But other than wanting to keep up with Go in general, what is your why do you care about Go? What do you do?
What do I do
with Go in general?
Yeah, that's a good question. I'm kind of between contracts right now, but generally speaking, I help companies improve their software delivery. So I kind of have a double-sided career, if you will. I'm heavily involved in Go programming. I have a few open source projects I work on and maintain, and then I also try to be as language agnostic as possible when helping teams and improve CI/CD and think of better ways to deliver software. So I work in sort of a consulting space in that regard. But I like Go a lot. One of the main reasons I like Go is because it's so easy for relative newcomers to pick it up. So I think it's kind of an equalizer, if you will, among juniors and seniors working on the same team together.
I think that the low barrier to entry to Go might have been one of the reasons it's caught up so fast. And honestly, it hasn't come at a huge cost. The language is pretty verbose, but it is pretty simple. So it makes a lot of sense. Well, that's great. If you said you love Go, right?
I would say so.
I've heard people say when you love something, you got to let it go. If you had to remove a feature from the language, who's on the short list? What's on the short list?
Oh, I'm so glad you asked, because actually I have a Go related YouTube channel, and I just uploaded a video today called 10 Things I Hate About Go.
So number one?
The first thing I would remove from Go if I could is naked returns. I absolutely hate naked returns.
Other than Puritan reasons?
I think they hurt readability.
Oh, that actually makes sense, because you don't understand what's gonna happen.
Yeah, I mean, if it's a really short function, it doesn't hurt readability very much. But I've never seen it improve readability, and I've only seen it hurt it. So I think it should just go away.
I think that it makes sense. If you like Go, then you like verbosity. You like things to be written out and say.
Yeah.
There's a great talk by the person who did GoKit. I forgot that guy's name. Peter Bergen.
Okay.
Where he says one of the great things about Go compared to Python, for example. Now, this is I'm not here to rain on other languages' parade.
Of course.
But just in comparison is that when you read a line, you know what's going to happen, right? It's very, very easy to read a line and directly translate it to the machine code that's going to run. So you would remove naked returns, and I think Peter would thank you for it. On the other side, you said you want to be language agnostic, so you flirt around with other languages. What features would you add?
I would like more functional programming features in Go. I like the mixed paradigm. JavaScript. As much as I dislike JavaScript for other reasons, I like that it has this mixed paradigm that you can easily switch between, functional and object oriented and so on. And now that we have generics in Go, I think that this is a lot more attainable. So I think we'll start to see some more functional paradigms in Go, and I'm looking forward to that.
There's a lot of people who are really into functional programming, and I think that if Go offered more out of the box functional stuff, we could steal some more crowds. We could take the Clojure people in, and they're pretty nice usually. We could take maybe even some of the Node people in, even though they'd have to learn how to behave, types and compilation and stuff. All right, if you dreamed up this podcast and now it's happening, who's your dream guest? Who's coming on to? Because right now I'm the guest, which is probably anticlimactic for you.
Yeah, I enjoy talking to people. I've been hosting a couple of other podcasts for a couple of years now, and the best guests are often people I've never heard of. So it's not like I necessarily have this starstruck eyes or whatever.
So not
really
Beyonce.
Forward to meeting someone.
That's what you're saying.
Well,
I mean, think about it. Give us a call. Yeah, give us a call. Which is a good opportunity to say, if you enjoyed the show, it's hard to get the word out, and we want to get into the community. So be sure to leave a rating, which really helps on iTunes or Spotify or wherever you listen to this podcast. And if you have something you want to share with us, for example, Beyonce, if you want to talk to us and come be a host, DiCaprio, you're also welcome. Send us an email at news@cupofgo.dev. That is news@cupofgo.dev.
Awesome. All right, Shay, can I ask you some questions?
So go ahead. Shoot.
Why are you on this show?
So I'm a part of a Slack community called Rands, which is really, really has been a great source of information for me for many topics. It's this Slack community where a lot of leaders from the tech space congregate and talk about stuff from, data platforms and engineering leadership and whatever. And I saw your message, and I was like, all right, you sent a message where you want to start a Go podcast for the aforementioned reasons. I have this awesome mic lying around. I don't know if the listeners, I'll get real close up and personal. I have this really good microphone lying around from my high school days where I had a recording studio. So I thought I finally wanted to put it to good use. And here we are.
Here we are. And we happen to be in almost the same time zone, which made it convenient. We're just an hour off from each other.
Yeah, you're in Amsterdam.
Yep.
I'm based in Herzliya. It's next to Tel Aviv, which you probably heard of in Israel. So yeah.
Super.
Not in the EU, but in the Eurovision. So close enough.
Okay. Yeah, right. And so what do you do professionally? Are you using Go on a daily basis?
Yeah. So my current job is founding engineer at Rico AI. Shout out to Rico. It's my current workplace. I've been there for the last 2.5 years. It's a startup in the SaaS security space, where there's a huge explosion recently. You probably heard about, a lot of data security companies and cloud security companies and whatever. We're one of them. We're the best, though. And
of course,
I've been there from the very start.
Unless the others want to be sponsors, then we're all good.
Like if one, Daz, Wiz, Orca, Centra, if you're listening, we'll take any sponsorship you can give, but only if you use Go in the back end. So I've been there for the last 2.5 years. Started as the founding engineer and was the VP of R&D for 2 years almost. And recently I've moved back to being hands-on engineering. And, this sort of goes hand in hand with doing these podcasts, which is exactly after 2 years of basically management, I want to get back into the nitty-gritty. So a good way to do that is to actually learn about the new features and how are they useful, et cetera, et cetera.
So we've both taken breaks from hands-on and done management work in the past. I didn't mention that in my intro, but I've done management work for several companies for a while too. What do you miss most when you're not coding? When you're in that management role, what do you miss the most about coding?
So I think it's sort of two sides of the same coin. I started as a developer in the army, as many people in Israel, get their career started when I was 18. And I was in the army for 6 years, oscillating between like commander, which is basically manager, and hands-on. And then when I was discharged, I worked for Infection Monkey as a tech lead. Started hands-on and then onboarded some more engineers to the project. And then back again to founding engineer at Rico, then VP R&D, now founding engineer again. So this has been a pendulum that has been swinging throughout my career. And on the extreme ends, I miss exactly the same things. When I'm managing, especially large operations with many people, what I miss most is just focus, hours, sitting. I'm a night owl. I could sit until 4 a.m. just programming and hacking away at a difficult problem and trying to figure out the best solutions. Specifically, if it's coding, is just so rewarding to have that like instant feedback loop, which obviously you get with Go because you write your tests and everything runs fast, et cetera, et cetera.
Yep.
And on the other end of the spectrum, when I'm fully hands-on and I get all the focus hours I want, the thing I miss most is having no focus hours, jumping between small thread to small thread to small thread, this initiative, this person, this talk, this whatever. So I think that this is a pendulum that's going to keep on swinging. But right now I'm really enjoying the focus hours, just like sitting and grinding away at a big problem. We're working on a new big service at work right now with a lot of moving parts. loading V8 in a Go backend service and managing data so that the product team can change it without re-releasing and watching changes and webhooks, blah, 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 and scale, whatever. And I think it's really fun to just have a big problem and chunk away at it bit after bit after bit, hour after hour after hour. It's a lot of fun.
Awesome. So you had this microphone from high school. Tell us a little bit about your studio history. Why do you have this microphone?
So I am a musician as well, not a professional one, just a hobbyist. I've been in a couple of bands, and one of the things I used to do, and if you dig, deep enough in the internet, I'm not going to really point people towards the link, but if you dig deep enough, you can find videos of me from like 14 shouting on stages in Jerusalem, which is where I grew up. And, my family was very supportive, so they bought me this recording equipment, this specific microphone. I got, I think, secondhand from someone, so it's been going pretty strong. I don't remember which one is it. I think it's, Rode NT1A, which is great.
Should be a good one, yeah.
And I've been recording, I did some stuff for money, but mostly friends and random songs and joke stuff and whatever, including the theme song, which you listened to in the beginning of this episode. Awesome.
Very cool. Do you have any big dreams or hopes for this this podcast, other than getting great sponsors and meeting Beyonce?
So, jokes aside, I really, really want people to reach out and say, hey, I listened to the podcast. That was interesting. Here's some stuff. The best feeling I had after doing the last, we have a Go chapter in Israel, run by the great Miki Tabeka. Shout out to Miki. Is that, so after the talk, people stay and they're like, they want to ask questions. And, the cleaners already want to run you out of the place and you're still like talking about the lecture. And then they reach out over email or over Twitter and keep the conversation going. So my hopes for the podcast is to just get a lot of conversations going, not even necessarily with me, just within the community. I think usually this discourse is very satisfying for the person who's knowledgeable and can, give extra value, and very teaching and valuable for the person who comes with maybe less experience or with the questions. They can just get their answers, in a very community-y space. Like they say about children, a lot of program, it takes a village. Like you want people to talk about, about your program, about your problems, about what you need to learn, where do you need to go next. So I hope this will spark a lot of that. And if it's with me, extra wonderful.
Wonderful. I agree. I would love to make this part a useful part of the Go community. If you're listening and you have ideas how to improve, of course, get in touch. Again, news@cupogo.dev. We'd love to hear from you. Suggestions, news items, anything you have to say. Swear words are also welcome, but we do prefer more constructive criticism rather than negative criticism. Mm-hmm. But anything is better than nothing.
Yeah. There's no such thing as a bad publicity until someone, pushes a vulnerability in your Go package.
Right.
All right, so I think that pretty much sums it up for our inaugural episode. I'm also completely done through my cup of coffee here. So
my coffee has gotten cold. Yeah, it's time to go get a refill.
All right, so thank you very much for listening, and hope to see you next week.
Until then, cheers.
Cheers.